Today we have, oh, wait a minute, Shannon, I need your last name.
Jamail.
Jamail. Yeah. How do you spell that?
J-A-M as in mom, A-I-L. And I don't know if I,
Jamail, right?
yes, Jamail.
Okay. Hold on.
Sorry, my father-in-law, I'm in my father-in-law's house.
Today I want to welcome Shannon Jamail. Shannon is the founder and creator of Mind and Body Complete. She is a best-selling author, podcast host, retreat leader, therapist turned performance coach, and tequila connoisseur. Not really, but she does enjoy sipping on a good pour. I already love you, Shannon. Shannon has a passion and a mission to elevate women in mind and body in order to connect, grow, and thrive through her programs and intentional products. She lives on her ranch with her family in the hill country of Texas.
Yay.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am so humbled and grateful to be here.
You know, Texas is one of my favorite places to go.
I noticed on, your deal, like all the places that you go to, you do come to here to Texas quite often.
I do, and I love that state. And I was there a week ago, and I always find these lakes. You guys have amazing lakes around in that area, and then there's all these beautiful homes and all these boats out in the water. And so
Yes.
my husband laughs. He's like, every time you travel, Kim, that whatever that city is that you go to, that's the new place we're supposed to be moving to.
Yay! Yeah, no, it's great. The people are great, and there's, lakes are definitely, there's so many lakes, especially where we're at. In particular, there's a lot of big lakes around us, so it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, jump in and tell us a little bit about who you are. First of all, I do love like you have the whole mind body connection. I'm somebody who very much believes that we have to integrate all of those things, but give us the background about like where you were and how you became a performance coach.
Yeah, well, my background goes all the way back to I used to be an executive in corporate, life and all that fun stuff. But I was always interested in mental health as far as how the brain works and how our physical symptoms usually manifest from our emotional disruptions, and sometimes vice versa, but a lot of times it's mostly coming from our thoughts and our thinking and maybe stress levels and maybe some mental health disorders or, all kinds of goodies there. And so when I decided to leave corporate America, I thought, I'm going to go to school and get my master's. And I did that. And then I went through working as a clinical therapist and had a practice for a while, and then realized that the way mental therapy is structured is beautiful. It really is. It's a beautiful thing. I highly recommend, really honestly, Kim, everybody to go and try it out, because there's all of us have something that we could really work through and figure out and see what's underlying in some of our today issues, right? But one of the things that therapy does is it spends a lot of time in the history, right, and in our past, and through that, and sometimes we can get stuck there, and a therapist has to be open and receiving to everything that a client is feeling at that moment, which I love. But I really wanted to work in a way where we could get things accomplished in a little bit of a faster, less medical model role, that we weren't constrained by exactly what the medical model said we had to do. I kind of wanted to go outside of the box more. And so that's why I decided to do coaching instead, which really says, okay, this happened in the past. That's great. And let's work through that a little bit. But really, let's see how we can use that in a different way today, and maybe look at it differently and use it differently so that we can focus on what is the goals today that we want to accomplish, not what so much happened yesterday. And so that's why I changed and really went into performance coaching. And then I started hosting retreats all over the world, really. And my demographic is women that I work with, and just really trying to figure out, what's your goal? What is your goal, and how can we get there? And it usually involves both the mind and body in some way. And how can we elevate that?
Well, a couple of things, first of all, that you said that really resonated with me. And I am one of these people that 100% believes that we all need a coach or a counselor or someone in our life. Like
Mm-hmm.
I tell people, I've been seeing my sweet Charlie for the last, I don't know, 20 years, and Charlie
Mm-hmm.
will always be in my life. Because I don't know if I'll need Charlie 10 times this year or 3 times this year. But what I know is that a better version of Kim Strobel happens when she works with Charlie rather than trying to figure out all of this shit on her own.
Yes.
And the other thing that I like about him is, you're right. I think as good as the field of mental therapy is, there has been a ton of focus on like, okay, well, let's dive into all of your childhood wounds, and
Mm-hmm.
let's stay there for a really long time. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that Charlie's always done with me is like, we're going to look at those, but I'm way more interested in giving you strategies to get to where you're going, because we
Love it.
can work and harp on all of that stuff for months on end, but I actually want to give you some tools and some strategies for getting out of that quicker and into what you really want.
I love it. And I loved what you said is that Charlie helps, you helps you, but you're doing it. You create the better version of you each time, right? And I think what's important here is that a lot of times we don't really even recognize that we can only process through a lens of our own experience, right? So whatever we're viewing and doing and thinking, it's through the lens of our own experience. And so having another person, whomever they are, somebody you trust, a mentor, a coach, a therapist, a psychiatrist, whatever that looks like, that can look at it in a different lens is so powerful. I can't put enough stress on that. It's so powerful that every human being could benefit in having some sort of person in their arena with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that he was instrumental in my marriage too, because we also used him for marriage therapy. And I
Yes.
really want to be clear with our audience, because this is something that I feel really strongly about, is just what you said. There's nothing wrong with all of this reaching out and getting some help. It's actually the most proactive thing that we can do. And most of the time, when you find that really trusted coach or therapist, I don't even like calling Charlie a therapist. I've actually called him a spiritual mentor, because I feel like he, again, has just helped with the evolvement of me and my soul and who I am. But people that finally take that first step and do that, they are amazed at how helpful it really is in their life. So I really want to remove that whole stigma for any of you out there who are thinking about that. It's actually a courageous and very strong choice to make, to actually seek that help from someone else. Because you're right, we're so stuck in our own perceptions of things that we cannot disseminate all that's going on in our heads. And so I can't wait to talk to you about all of these things today.
Yeah, so true, so true. That's a really, really good way of looking at it, is really trying to help people move past that stigma. And I even like to look at it like, if finding help, that verbiage doesn't work for you, how about finding someone to work with you on your goals? Maybe you don't, because I don't want someone, no one, and I've had people at all varying degrees of mental health disruption. No one comes in broken necessarily, and I know people get real fond of that word broken. I just don't feel that. I feel that we've had situations that have happened, or we have a thinking. Um, I'm just really glad that you talked about the fact that there should not be a stigma with seeking the help. But I also encourage people, if help sounds wrong to them, right? Because some people are like, well, I'm not broken. And I don't honestly think anybody's broken. I think we all just have stuff, right? But if help, that word doesn't resonate with someone, I just encourage someone to look at it as, could you use assistance with your goals, right? Maybe a goal you have is to do something differently, or to think differently, or to feel differently. And so whether it's help, or whether it's goals, or whether it's just seeking some support, there is definitely no stigma in doing that. So I'm so grateful that you said that.
Yes. And I love this idea of, we do have so much that has happened in our past that we don't even realize is there, that is really operating in our present life and determining our future.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that you
Mm-hmm.
really work on that. Like, let's get you unstuck,
Yes.
and then move you into the future. Because, one of the things that I talk about when I'm teaching the growth mindset curriculum to people or students or adults or organizations is, we have these labels that get given to us from early on. And some of them might even seem like they're a positive label, but they're really not. And some of them are very negative labels. So for example, one of the labels that I was told all of the time is, Kim is really hyper. Kim is careless. Kim does everything way too fast. And
Mm,
I had these labels that didn't feel good, right? When somebody was like, oh,
sure.
Kim's so hyper all of the time. Because it made me feel less than. It made me feel like something was wrong. I'm not fitting the quota of how I'm supposed to act and be in the world. And as an adult, it took me many years to realize that actually that level of intensity and if you want to call it hyperness, you could call it that, but that's what makes me really good on the stage, right? Is like I have this
Yeah.
contagious enthusiasm for life. And while it might make someone else feel like, wow, she's quite a bit, it's actually the thing that makes me who I am. And I find that we all have these labels we were told when we were younger, and that continues to play out in our present life because the view that you adopt for yourself profoundly affects the way you lead your life. And so if you were told this label or this certain thing about you, and then that gets stuck and lodged in the back of your brain, and then that becomes an identity, and that identity becomes a belief, and those
Hmm.
beliefs are always driving your actions. And so I'm just curious, do you have anything to speak upon when it comes to this idea of these labels and how they
Sure.
really do affect us?
Sure. Yeah. One thing I ask people to consider is that when we are given a label, like for instance, Kim, if I label you as Kim, you're too hyper, right? Let's just say, I'd like people to consider that I'm labeling you, right? The person who labeled you, they're actually labeling their own insecurity. And so when I label you as you're too hyper, what I'm saying is I wish I had the energy you had, or subconsciously I'm saying I wish I could have that personality that Kim is just so, she has the energy of being able to connect with people. She has this bubbly, I'm telling you, it is 99.99999% of the time, a label is somebody else's insecurity that they've now put onto you. And
Okay,
something that,
I'm going to stop you right there because
sure.
that is so freaking profound. I mean, I have heard that before, but I'm not going to lie. I sometimes struggle to understand that. So I want you to go even deeper. Like, why is it their
Yeah.
insecurity? Because I am thinking to one particular person who she is like super zen and she's super relaxed and she's super private. Um, and I will tell you that every time as a school teacher, like I walked into her office or into the same room, just the mere energetic presence of me sent her over the edge.
Yes. Yeah. Good. I'm so glad you said that, because that is just another example of how it's their own deficiency, their own insecurity. And deficiency by meaning in their own mind, not I'm labeling them that. They just in their own mind, they see this as a deficiency or an insecurity. Or the third option is they fear it in their own life. Let me give you an example to bring it to like a personal level. My daughter, who's now 18, and she's going off to college, and we're so close now, but when she was preteen, teen, she really just did not take care of herself the way I felt a teenager should take care of herself, right? And so I was constantly picking at her, like, oh, you should wear your pants this way, or you should wear your shirt this way, or why don't you take care of yourself, or why do you? And what I was really subconsciously doing to her was thinking back to my own childhood when I was picked on for those things, and how insecure I felt at that time, and how I didn't want her to experience these things. Do you see what I'm
That
saying?
is
And how
so good.
I was putting my junk on her. And that's what someone does when they put a label on you. They're putting their junk on you. It's either something they're afraid they will be, or they lack and wish they had. And so we always attack something that's we're insecure about, or we're ignorant about, or we're afraid we're going to become. I mean, that really is, it always drives to that. Think about it this way. When you're feeling really, really good, right? Do you think about somebody else in a negative way? I mean, really, when you're feeling so good about yourself, do you look at someone else and go, ugh, she shouldn't wear that? Or you don't, because you feel so good about yourself,
Oh,
right?
that's so good. But now I am going to flip it because
Sure.
I need a little bit of self-coaching here. Because I too have noticed that like my husband and I can get super judgy sometimes
Sure.
around people. So for example, there's this person in our life who has these kids, and like she just drives us crazy. Like every single time we see her, she has to brag about her kids and tell us all that her kids are doing. And it just sickens us. Like we're just like, oh my gosh, like what is wrong with her? And so like we're judging her as a parent. So like, are you explain why I'm doing that? Are you saying that I'm
There,
feeling
there's a couple of different things, not to interrupt. There's a couple of different things. Let me also clarify. There are some times where we just think a thought and it just is there, right? So
right?
we just think, oh, that outfit's too small or too big or whatever. That's just observation. And there's difference because there's intention behind thoughts, right? And an
Right.
intention, your intention behind your thought is really what matters. So when you're judging this person or couple or whatever, when they're doing this, the intention is what matters. If your intention inside is like, oh gosh, why do they do that? That's so annoying. Is it because you feel like if you did it, it would be annoying? Is it because if you feel like you should do it more? Is it because, like you have to really dig into what's your intention of that. If it's just, I'm tired of hearing it, then okay, that might be it. It might just be, I'm tired of hearing it. But usually, let's really dig into this. Usually when we're triggered by someone, it's something within us. It's not them. It's usually something within us. So something within you is not liking what's being presented to you. Whether, like I said, it might be one of those things where you think if you did what she did, it would be annoying, right? And so maybe
Right.
you think that. Maybe you think, well, if I said these things about my kids or my niece or my nephew or whomever, that would just be so annoying if I did it, so it's annoying because she's doing it. Or
Yeah.
that's a big one. Or the other one is, do you feel like you should do it more with your kids? Maybe you don't recognize your kids enough. I'm not saying you do or don't. This
No,
just
I
might
know
be
what you're saying. Yeah.
things that might be going through your head.
So let me just go there with you for a minute.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, would you please shut your damn mouth and for once ask me about my kid? Because I get so sick of hearing you talk about your kids constantly to me. And then I try to share one little thing and you just trump me. And I just
Yeah.
and I just leave every conversation if I have to see this person at Walmart or wherever, and it just fires me up. And then I get mad at myself because I'm like, I don't choose to hang out with this person. So like, why does it annoy me if I have to see her every few weeks in Walmart and I have to hear her bullshit story about her kids? But it's like I find myself coming home and then I'm telling my husband about it. I'm like, guess what she did this time, And I
Yeah.
feel kind of judgy when I do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So honestly, this would take some work on your part to really dig into why is this triggering you? Because let's look at it this way. If it were me, right, I'm just making it up, and I saw her and these things happen, it might not trigger me at all. I might just be like, oh, she is who she is. She just
Yeah.
likes to talk about her kids. And I just send her love and move on my way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm not saying
I'm
that
not
it is.
sending
I'm
her
just saying
any
that
love,
could be.
Shannon.
Yeah. Well, and that might be the other thing too, is you've got to do that practice of, she needs this attention for some reason, right? So she needs this
Yeah.
attention. She's craving something. She's lacking something. She needs some attention. And so if you send her love and just release it, it might also untangle what's happening inside of you. But the
Gotcha.
only reason we get triggered, sister, and this is a hard one for all of us, the only reason why we get triggered is that something in us. It's not that other person, right? It just isn't. And I know that's really, not what people like to hear. And there's lots of disagreement with that, which I'm totally open to. But otherwise, just think about the fact that, you meet other people and they don't trigger you, and they might say weird, stupid, silly, goofy,
Right.
things. So there's something there that triggers you, something that's triggering something within you that you're not liking. And it could be very deep subconsciously that it's not readily available to snap up. But there's a trigger, and it has nothing to do with the fact that she's obviously someone who, might be a little bit self-centered, and
Right.
could
Right.
be, but it usually, even if that was the case, even if it was just that she's self-centered, it wouldn't trigger you. You
Right.
would just kind
Right.
of giggle about it and go, okay, good to see you. Like it
Yeah.
just would be
Yeah.
like, and so there's a trigger in there somewhere, and it has something to do with what you're feeling about you, more than what you're feeling about her.
Okay, so I always pull quotes out of the podcast. And so I wrote this down, but I want you to finish it for me. So the only reason we get triggered is because, and then what did you say?
It's something within us. It's not
It's
that other person.
something within us. I love that. And this is something I do totally believe, but then I find myself coming up with scenarios where I'm like, well, I don't know what she's triggering inside of me. I just think I just don't like this person. But you're right. Like,
Listen, I've had that too. Listen, I could talk about this all day and I'll meet someone and go, oh, no, no, no. This isn't going to be a person in my circle. And that's okay, for whatever reason. And honestly, if I'm being super, 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 super honest with myself, it's some insecurity in me, whatever it might be. And maybe I don't want to spend time figuring that shit out. Maybe I just want to move on and say, that's just not the person for me. But
I
but
know, but
always, if we're triggered, it's in us. It's
yeah,
always in us.
which makes perfect sense because when I talk about walking in the room, just my mere presence, it doesn't affect everyone like that. It just affects that one woman. And so
Bam.
you're right. It is, and I love that. And I encourage all of our listeners to think about that, to think about the crap that triggers us and to figure out where our ownership is in that piece.
Yeah.
Because I do wholeheartedly believe that quote. It's a hard one to swallow sometimes. I'm not
Yeah.
going to lie, but
It
I
is.
do believe it is true. So, oh my gosh, that right there has just been great. So all of our listeners, I want you to think about the people and the crap and the things that trigger you and figure out what is it inside of you that is feeling either insecure or wounded or whatever it might be, and understanding that we have a personal responsibility to flip that script for ourselves.
We do. We do. I do that. Listen, I do this to myself a lot too, Kim, where I might be reading a book or watching something or listening to something and I get triggered, right? I get fired up. And it's like, okay, what's happening here? And that's the time for me to ask myself. I could do one of two things here. I can explore this and figure it out and go through what I call an AFGO, another fucking growth opportunity, right? Or I'm like,
Wait a
screw it.
minute, say that acronym again.
It's AFGO, AFGO,
Another fucking
fucking
growth
growth opportunity.
opportunity. I love it.
I could do this, or I could say, I don't want to grow today. I'm just going to move on past this. We always have that opportunity whenever we're being triggered. And triggered could feel like you just said, it could feel like annoyed. It could feel like, you could even feel kind of like attacked, but you're not even sure why you're feeling attacked. You just feel that way. You could just be, I don't know, they just get on your nerves. You know what I mean? Like there's all different kinds of ways a trigger feels, but you know what it feels like because you feel it in your body even.
Oh, girl.
So
Oh,
yes,
girl. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I feel everything. So,
me
oh my
too.
gosh. Now, okay. So I want to go into this topic that you talk a lot about, which
Yeah.
is emotional disruption. What
Yes.
is an emotional disruption?
Yeah, so emotional disruption is anytime we're feeling an extra layer of angst or stress or anger or sadness. We go through all of these emotions, okay? So they're all normal. Anytime someone tells me, well, I have too much stress, it's like, well, let's talk about that because there's a certain level of stress of just living in day-to-day life that's normal, right? And
Yep.
so, but when you're going above that, right? And normal's different for everybody, so I'm not going to tell you what a normal layer is. You know, and the way is maybe some part of your life is just not functioning the way you'd like it to. Maybe your relationships are a little disjointed right now. Maybe work is really difficult. It's more difficult for you to get along with people at work. There's just a disruption somewhere in your functioning of life, which tells me there's an emotional disruption somewhere going on, right?
Yep.
And so, yeah, so that can stem from, like I said, it could stem from something going on currently in our relationships, at work, in our mind and our thinking, or it could even be a past trauma that has happened or a past situation that's happening, and for whatever reason it's bubbling up today, and that could be consciously or subconscious. And so all of these things can lead to what I call emotional disruption.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I feel like I'm in the middle of a ton of emotional disruptions right now, just with everything, right, that's going
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point too. It can also just come from external, right? I mean, just the state of the world that we're in right now is one big giant fucking emotional disruption. I mean, it really just is. It's actually what we like to say, even if I were to switch gears and go into a clinical realm, this is a constant state of emotional trauma that we're in, with everything that's going on with
on.
COVID-19, and then with the injustices that we're, fighting through, and the protests, and just all the kind of stuff that's going on. There's so much turmoil that puts us in emotional trauma. And so obviously emotional trauma is, going to be causing emotional disruption. But what I like to say is that there are three ways of dealing with emotional disruption.
Yeah.
Um, And I call them my triple Ds, and I can just briefly go over all three of
Please do.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first one is digging in, the second one is distraction or doing, and the third one is digest. And so basically what it looks like is digging in is kind of like leaning into it, leaning into what you're feeling, your emotional disruption. What is it, what does it feel like? Because listen, we all, for whatever reason, I don't know if we're, brought up this way or it just happens, we start to think that we're only supposed to feel happiness and everything else we're supposed to fix. And that's not the case. We're supposed to feel our feelings. They're meant to be felt. It's actually when we try to just stuff them away or numb them away or put them under the carpet, that's when we really start to see that the emotional disruptions turn into physical disruptions.
Ooh, I love that.
So yeah, so we've got to feel them. We got to take some time, turn the phone off, put it away, take a bath, sit in your closet, whatever it is, journal it out, cry it out, scream it out, talk it out. You've got to dig in. You've got to lean into what you're feeling. And I like to say that we want to lean into it until it no longer has power over us. Now that might not all happen in one session. That might not all happen in one, sit down. You might have to like lean in, feel it, dig into it. And then you might have to say, okay, I need a break. And that's when you would go to distraction, right? And then you would come back to digging in as you can. So, but then after you've dug in and you're leaning in and you're really trying to get into it, the next thing that you would do is distraction.
Okay. So step 2 is distraction.
Yeah, step 2 is distraction or doing. And that's basically when digging in becomes too much or you just need another tool, you need a break. And so this is real simple tools. Watch or read humorous things. We all know laughter makes a big difference in our life, right? And so emotional disruption can totally be disrupted by laughter. And then the other things that we all know, reading, creating art, watching a movie or documentary, chatting with your friends, other things, sewing, cleaning and organizing is a big one. Oh my goodness. For a lot of people that just really kind of helps bring clarity into their brain is just cleaning and
You know what, for me, so this is one of the things my therapist, Charlie, taught me is when I am emotionally charged and feeling all of my feelings, I can sometimes get really out of whack, like especially if I'm in a disagreement with my husband or whatever it might be. And so then he tells me the very best thing I can do is go take a run.
Love it.
I'm a
Work
runner.
it out. Yep.
Yeah.
That's the other one is exercise. I always like to say, if you can't work it out, go work it out. Right.
Yeah.
So if you can't work out whatever's bothering you or you're dealing with, then go work out and whatever that looks like. If it's a run, if it's a swim, if it's a fast walk, if it's yoga, if it's whatever it is, right? Because everybody's got their jam.
Yeah. But then let me ask you this.
Yeah,
let me ask you this. Do we sometimes misuse distraction to keep us from feeling all the feels? Like, do we not want to feel the way we do, so we veg out on social media for an hour, which really doesn't serve a good purpose? Like, do we abuse distraction too?
Yes. So I like to, first of all, social media, good. And I just don't even want to say this, but I feel like it's the source of all evil. And sometimes,
Yep.
and I use social media for business. So I realize the hypocrisy there. But social media is not where we need to spend time when we're in emotional disruption. As a matter of fact, I tell my clients when we're in emotional disruption, you need to turn it off for however long until you've worked through your emotional disruption, because all that's going to do is not only keep you in this space, but it's also going to add comparison and some other bullshit on there. So
Yes.
social media is not the thing. The other thing that you won't see in my list is drink more, right? Or any kind of drugs, or I'm not going to tell you to do all those things as your form of distraction, because that's not numbing it out. Even if it's hours and hours and hours of mindless TV is not necessarily the great distraction either. So I'm more like, we need to use the creative side of our brain, right? We need to use the creative or the humorous side of our brain. Like, we need to tap into those sections, music, art, journal, write, create. Like that's to me the distraction tools that I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
The other one would be mindfulness. Any way that you can practice mindfulness, whether it's through breath work or, focusing on the present moment, working through acceptance, meditation, writing out a thankful journal, whatever it might be. But any type of mindfulness is a really great distraction as well. And so those are some big ones.
That clarifies it for me. You're talking about distraction in a way that positively contributes to you being able to somewhat digest and resolve this issue.
Yes, exactly. One of the other things that I'll tell you that we could work on is the vagus nerve, believe it or not. The vagus nerve is super powerful. It's the longest nerve in our body. A lot of people are not very familiar with the vagus nerve, or maybe they are, they just don't realize what it all does, but it's the only nerve in our body that connects to the brain, heart, lungs, and gut, which the gut is really big for us, as well as all of our sensory throughout the body. And so it's the key part of our parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system. And so when we can work on our vagal tone, which is how effective our vagus nerve is, that's when we can start to affect too how we're feeling and how we're able to rest and relax, and then better able to process. And so just real quickly, a couple of things people can do.
I'm real interested because, you're talking to the girl who suffered greatly from crippling panic disorder. And so when you say the word synthetic, sympathetic system, which I wish I could just live in that system all of the time. So we need a stress reliever associated to this. I'm highly intrigued. So keep going.
Yeah. So the way we work on our vagal tone is through vagus nerve stimulation, and there's a few different ways we could do that, and I highly recommend taking a few that work for each person and just start practicing them. One is cold exposure, and I know not a whole lot of people like the cold exposure, but it really is exactly what it sounds like, taking the coldest bath you can take, or cold dip pools.
Really?
Yeah, so cold exposure is really, really fabulous for our vagus nerve.
So you're saying, if I am starting to feel anxious or panicky or overwhelmed or mentally frazzled, that I should maybe jump in and take a really cold shower.
So what I like to do first is I like to tell people, if you have a bath and a shower, even better, get into hot water, right?
Okay.
And then get into a cold shower.
Wow. I'm all about the hot bath. So
and so you finish it always with cold, which is really hard. And you can even go back and forth. I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of these health spas, the ones that are focused on health, as well as, the massages and the facials and stuff. They'll have the hot, cold plunges.
Yes,
and there's a reason for that. It's super, super fabulous for our nervous system. And so if you have both, and you have that availability to sit in the hot bath and get in the shower, sit in the hot bath and take a shower. If you can do that a good 3 to 5 times, I am telling you right now, sister, it will change your life. It will change your life.
Okay, so I need to sit in the hot bath for 5 minutes, and then the shower for 5 minutes?
No, you don't even have to do that. No, you could sit in the hot bath for about a minute or two. I would say a minute to 3 minutes.
Okay.
And then the shower is only 30 seconds. And then hot bath a minute to 3 minutes, and then the shower 30 seconds. The key is when you're done with your rotation and you're like, okay, I'm finished, you have to end with the cold.
Gotcha. Okay.
So cold exposure. Another one is slow and deep breathing, which I know a lot of us know that slow and deep breathing can affect how we feel, and it affects our emotional setup. But, really, really understanding and maybe coming up with a breath work that resonates with someone is super, super important. One of the ones that I like to use is a 4-6-8 process. So inhaling to a count of 4, holding for a count of 6, exhaling for a count of 8. And so just nice, slow, and deep. If you can do that, again, 3 to 5 times in the moment that you're not feeling right, it can make a big difference. So slow and deep breathing.
That's so good. And let me just tell you that, most people begin to overbreathe when they have a panic attack. I stop breathing. I hold my breath. And so breath work is a real important part. I'm actually going to add this to my note card, the 4-6-8. I like that. So, okay,
4-6-8. I love it. I like to tell people to practice deep breathing even when you don't need it, because it's like what I like to say is and you can appreciate this. It's impossible to have a panic attack if you're slow, deep breathing, but it's also impossible to slow, deep breathe when you're at the beginning of a panic attack if you haven't been practicing it, right? So it's like, wait a minute, you can't just say, oh, I feel a panic attack coming on, let me hurry up and slow, deep breathe. That doesn't work. You had to have had this as part of your system, as part of one of your tools.
I'm writing myself a note card right now and putting it next to my meditation chair, because I do know that the value of practicing is so that it becomes second nature to you, so that you have the skills. So I'm going to practice this during my meditation. Love it. Okay.
Perfect.
Keep going.
All right, singing, humming, and chanting. You know, we like to, sometimes some people like to make fun of the woo-woo of some of the yogis who chant and hum and all that stuff. But there's actually science behind it that really is incredible for the vagus nerve. And here's what's funny, you know, I think we kind of know that because if we sing, even if we suck at singing, how good you feel when you sing, right? I mean, you just
Yes.
do. And performers will always tell you they have that real big high when they get off stage. It's not just because they were performing for people, it's actually the singing. It's what it's stimulating that does that. So
Wow. I
um,
did read that in a book, by the way, that when you start to have a panic attack, start singing, and you
yes,
can't have both. You can't have the panic attack
no.
and be singing. So,
Yeah, so if you can sing, or if singing is just your brain's not, because you know it depends on where you're at in your stage of panic attack. If your brain's not able to function on words, you can hum and just maybe pick one or two
mm,
words and chant it over and over and over again.
interesting.
So
Interesting.
yeah, probiotics, believe it or not, is real great for the vagus nerve as well as omega-3 fatty acids. So if those are two supplements that are not in your diet, I highly recommend. But also, I'm not a big person on like taking a bunch of supplements because I think you should only take what you need. Otherwise, you're just pissing it out. Personally, like you
Yes.
really are literally pissing it out.
What are some
And then
omega-3 fatty acids?
fishes, you
Okay,
know,
so the
fish
fish
has,
oils.
yeah, fish, and then also chia seeds, hemp
Oh,
seeds.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's omega-3s and lots of different things. You have to be very purposeful these days, though, to really get it into your diet. And so sometimes it is easier to take a supplement, but definitely, you know, there's some natural ways that
Well,
you can get it in there too.
yeah, I actually ordered chia seeds from like in bulk from Amazon, and I just put a scoop of them in my protein shake in the morning.
Perfect. Perfect.
Now I'm
I
feeling so
love
good
chia
about
seeds.
myself, Shannon.
Yes, girl, I love chia seed. And then we know meditation is really great. That's just got so many great things all the way around, but it does help with the vagus nerve. And then this is a fun one, but massages, specifically foot massages. Foot massages really help work on the vagus nerve. And then lastly is laughter. And again, that's the vibration mostly in the
Yes.
throat area.
Oh my
So
gosh, this
yeah,
is so interesting. I love that. Okay, so those are all going to be helpful for step 2, which is
yes,
distraction.
yep.
And
And
then
then
the last step of this you said is digest?
digest. Yeah, so digest is what can you learn from this, right? And you get to digest pretty much when you feel like you've worked through, you've leaned in, you've distracted where you needed to, maybe you've leaned back in, and now you're at the place where it's like, what can I learn from this? What is the takeaway here? What is my lesson out of this? And there's always a lesson, even if you're in the midst of grief or the worst kind of hell you can think of. There's always something that you can learn. There's always a lesson. There's always a takeaway, even if it is to prepare you to maybe help somebody else in the future. And
Mm.
so there's always a benefit, a lesson, and then even just asking, is there another perspective, or do I need to spend some time doing acceptance work? Is this where I really need to say what's within my control and what's not within my control, and sending what's not in my control out with love, just knowing that, you know, it's not in your control. And there's so much that's not in our control, by the way. There's really only one thing that's in our control, and I'm going to give you a hint and tell you it's not your thoughts. And that's different than what most people think, is that we control
Ooh,
our thoughts. We actually don't. And let me give you an example. How many times have you done something and in your head you're like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to be here, I hate this, I hate doing this, I don't want to exercise, I don't want to eat this, or whatever it is, like your thought, that's what you're thinking, but you
right.
choose otherwise. So we can influence our thoughts, but we don't always choose them. The only thing we choose is our action. So I might be thinking, I don't want to do this, but I choose to do it anyway. And I do it anyhow because I know that it's the right decision to do, right? Or whatever. Or maybe I do it and I know it's not the right decision, but I do it anyway. And so our
Or the
thoughts,
action is the action sometimes where you're like, hey, I'm going to stop with that thought and choose a better feeling thought.
you absolutely can. But remember, sometimes when we're doing that, our underlying thought is still saying, yeah, you're not fooling me. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
yeah, right, right.
So, and you do that enough to where you can, right? You influence your thoughts. Yes, you absolutely
Yes.
can. Or you change your activities to where it does, and it does change your thoughts. But always you're going to have a thought, and then you are actually choosing a reaction. It might be the opposite of that thought. It might be in favor of that thought. But we actually influence our thoughts, and we choose our actions or reactions. Same thing.
Gotcha.
to a certain degree. So yeah, but once we imagine if we ever really truly, and I'm not there either, listen, but if we ever really truly got to that place where we accept what we control, which is only our actions and our reactions, could you just imagine how much more peaceful life would be?
I
I'm not saying it would have
know.
everything exactly the way we would want,
Right.
but it doesn't always line up the way we want anyway when we're fighting and we're resisting and we're trying to control, and
Yeah,
so
so much of life is about like, whatever you resist persists, right? And
mhm,
so I have been able to do that with some really hard things in my life. I have been able to surrender and accept, and
mhm,
that pathway gives me way more relief than the constant fighting of
so
that
much freedom.
particular situation. Like even for years I just despised the idea that I was a divorced person, that I had divorced and remarried, and I just fought it. Like, why couldn't
Mhm.
I have married the right person the first time? Why did I have to share my son back and forth every other weekend with his dad? And I just kept resisting it against what I felt like should have been my life.
Right.
And I finally do you know how much suffering was caused by me envisioning if that didn't have to
Yes.
happen?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and so I finally, I think it was just a couple of years ago. You know what it was? I'll tell you what it was. This is what did it. My son did it for me because he's going to be turning 20, and we were and his dad and I divorced, or I left his dad when he was about 2 months old.
Okay.
Um and he's 20 now, and we were having a conversation, and I just said, Spencer, I just have a lot of guilt. I couldn't stay in the marriage, um, but I just have a lot of guilt over you having to go back and forth between two homes. And when he went to college, I kind of looked at it like, look at all the days I missed with him. Like, let's take every other
Mm,
weekend, right, times 18.
sure.
And he looked at me and said, Mom, I wouldn't have had it any other way. And
Mhm.
I said, really? And he said, well, I mean, he's really close to my husband, Scott, who came into his life when he was like a year old. And he said, I would have never had Scott in my life.
Mm,
And so it was a different story that he had told himself than what I was telling myself about him and his experience.
mhm. Mhm.
And I finally got to like acceptance. Like maybe
Yeah.
the story I've created around this situation is really not the only story that's there.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Yeah, I think acceptance work can literally be the biggest game changer in anybody's existence, if I'm being honest, because there's so much that we carry around all day, every day, thinking that either it's our responsibility or it should be our responsibility or whatever may be the case. And the truth is there's very little within our control. We can still have goals and we can still influence our life, but if we can come to that place of peace and acceptance, it's just so much more freeing. It really is. And I love how you said the story you were telling yourself, and you're probably familiar with Brene Brown,
Oh,
and
girl, yes.
yeah, because that's a big deal. That's such a powerful thing, and I think it's a great way of opening a conversation with someone like your son or a spouse or a significant other or a friend. Is like, the story I've been carrying and telling myself is this, and maybe hoping for some understanding or a different perspective there. So that's
That
really
is so
powerful, girl.
good.
Yeah, acceptance is a big one. So
Yes.
yeah, so digest is the last step really, and to help remove some of this emotional disturbance is to, what is my perspective here? What kind of acceptance work do I need to do? What do I need to surrender? And what did I learn? And then you've
Mm,
by that point you've really worked through that emotional disturbance.
that is so very good. Oh my goodness. Okay, so a couple of things that I want to do before we end this.
Okay,
One, in a second, I'm going to let you tell our audience where they can find you, where they can
sure.
connect with you. And then actually, when you brought Brene Brown up, so I've been listening to her podcast, Unlocking You.
Yes.
And she does this really cool thing at the end of her podcast where she'll ask like 10 rapid fire questions. And I'm like, that would be so fun to do with my clients. So we're going to do 5 at the end here. But first, I want you to tell my people, where can they find more information about you and connect with you?
Yeah, so it's real simple. You just go to mindbodycomplete.com, and you can
And
find
we'll
any of my
drop that in the
social
show
media.
notes.
Yeah, social media and everything. You can shoot me an email, and I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good. I love this emotional disruption. And then also, if they're interested in your best-selling book, it's called Surrender, right?
Yes, and you can get that on Amazon or from my website.
Okay, cool. We'll drop all that in the show notes. Okay, are you ready for the rapid fire questions?
I think.
Okay, here we go. What's the one show that you've been binging lately?
It's the same damn show, girl. You're going to laugh. It's Modern Family. I could watch the same show over and over and over and over again.
Who
It's
do you
Modern
love? Who's your
Family.
favorite character on there?
Claire, because my
I
husband
knew it.
swears I'm Claire. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah, no, that's my show, girl.
I love Claire too. I love Claire too. There's actually this scene where she and Phil go to a hotel for the weekend and they do role play and they
Oh,
pretend.
yes.
Oh, and I'm like, we should do that, Scott. That would be so much fun.
Oh, gosh, yes. Clive
Okay.
Bixby. Clive
Yeah.
Bixby.
Yeah. What is one of your luxuries that you give yourself?
Oh, massages weekly.
Oh, me too. Me
Yes.
too.
Yeah, and mine are deep tissue ones, the kind that you cringe, but afterwards it feels so good.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, push as hard as you want. I need that.
Yes.
You release
Yes.
all that stuff from my body. Okay, here's the third one. What's something that people maybe don't know about you?
I dropped out of high school. And then in my sophomore year, I started my sophomore year of high school, and then I thought that I was too good for high school and dropped out. Didn't go my whole sophomore year, and then my junior year, I woke up and said, yeah, that's not a good idea. So my junior and senior year, I had to take sophomore classes and catch back up. And I ended up graduating with honors on time.
Wow. Did your
Yeah.
parents freak out?
My parents were divorced. My mom lived in Ohio. My dad lived in California. I flew back and forth, and I went through a real rebel stage my sophomore year and said, I don't need either of you.
Ah, gotcha. Yep. Okay. You were the rebel.
I was.
All right. Question number 4. What's your favorite food?
Oh man, it's pizza, but pizza doesn't always like me.
Ah, yeah. So you're going to pay for it. You're a glutton for
Yes.
punishment if you do it.
Yes.
And then I always end with this one here. How are you, Shannon, reaching for more joy in your life right now?
I'm doing a better job of just appreciating the here and now, even if the here and now is not exactly what I'm wanting. And I feel like when I can do that, I think I might have mentioned to you before we recorded, I'm living in between right now. Our house is being built, so I'm living in an RV, and we had sold our California house, and so we're in between, and it's not fun in between an RV with kids. But the truth of it is, it can be, it really can be. And so really just finding the here and now and what's cool about the here and now, and not worrying about, well, I wish I had this, or I wish we should have rented a house or whatever. It's more like this here and now is pretty cool. So yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. I need to work on that too. Oh my gosh, Shannon, you've been like, we could talk forever and ever and ever about so many topics, but you have the same Kim Strobel energy. You talk fast, you move fast.
I do.
I can see it. I'm like, we have I don't know if this is like a 40-minute recording, but most people would take like 60 minutes, but we just went through it.
Girl, I'm also the one that listens to, I don't know if you do, I listen to podcasts and watch videos at 1.5 speed.
Oh, me too. Yeah. And audiobooks.
Yes, I do too. Even the fun ones, because I have my self-development ones and then I have my fun books. And I'm like, I do, yes. I talk way too fast.
Yeah,
I hear
just
you.
give me the information.
I love it though.
Oh my gosh. Well, what a pleasure. And it's so nice to have you. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.